Well, good morning, everybody. It's 8 a.m. and so we're going to go ahead and get started with our breakfast this morning. I want to thank you all for participating via the web. I know in these times things are a little bit different. We've had to actually at North Houston move around some of our events. We've been holding committee meetings already virtually, and we're really excited about hosting this breakfast this morning with Carol Haddock. Carol is a longtime friend of mine. Uh, she's a great supporter of the North Houston Association. She's always got a representative at our committee meetings to give a report from the city of Houston. And we just really appreciate their active participation within our organization. Before we hear Carol speak, I'm going to ask the North Houston Association President, Marlisa Briggs, to make a few announcements. Marlisa?
Good morning. Hi, Chris. Hi, everyone. Of course, it is, we really look forward to the day that we can say it's good to see you, but we really appreciate those of you who are joining us this morning. And also just to let you know real quick that we will have a recording of today's presentation available for everyone on our website. So if you have some colleagues who missed this, you can certainly share that recording link with them soon, later today. So additional housekeeping, if you have any questions for our speaker, there is a chat box that most of you are probably familiar with, and feel free to go ahead and type in those questions as you have them. It will not interrupt the program at all. What we will do is after Carol's remarks, then Chris will field those questions to Carol. So as you think of things, just go ahead and chat away in the box, and we will get to those as time allows. So also I'd like to, most of you already know Carol very well and are very familiar with all of her work, but I'll just give you, I'd like to go ahead and give her a formal introduction. Carol is the director of Houston Public Works, which is the largest American Public Works Association accredited agency in the nation. The department is responsible for the city's water and wastewater systems, street and storm drainage systems, and regulation of both public and private development. To accomplish this, the department has a trained workforce of nearly 4,000 people, an annual operating budget of $2.1 billion, and an annual capital budget of $750 million. Carol has been at the city for 14 years. In her nearly 2 years in leadership, the department has weathered Hurricane Harvey, set records for water treatment in a day, reduced environmental impacts in both the wastewater and stormwater systems, maintained a next business day pothole program 99% of the time, and supported more than $6 billion in development, much of that related to Hurricane Harvey. Prior to joining Public Works, Carol worked in private consulting for Harris County Flood Control District, as a congressional fellow for the U.S. Senate Committee on Environment and Public Works. Carol is a licensed professional engineer in the state of Texas with civil engineering bachelor's degree from Rice and has a master's degree in public administration from U of H. She's been married to Will Haddock, a Houston attorney for 10 years. So she's going to take the screen in just a moment, but first, I would like to thank our underwriter for today, Union Pacific. They are always a strong community partner, and we appreciate their support of NHA. And they've prepared a short message for us this morning, so let's take a look.
Really, it's just business as usual, and we're actually moving a little bit more trains, trying to keep this thing going. We're not going to slow down pretty much regardless. You know, there's so much commitment with the railroad and transporting all of our goods that us shutting down is not feasible. It's kind of the backbone of the country, and that's what we've been for the last 150 years. And without us moving the freight and moving the stuff that needs to be there, the shipping containers full of everything you can imagine, masks to ventilators to everything. I mean, all medical supplies.
Good morning, North Houston Association. As you just saw, Union Pacific continues to build America as we have over the last 150 years. We are pleased to be the sponsor of this morning's General Membership Breakfast. Now, please join me in welcoming our guest speaker, City of Houston Public Works and Engineering Director, Carol Haddock.
Well, good morning, everybody. It's my pleasure to join you for this virtual breakfast. It doesn't taste as good as a real in-person breakfast with real food, but it doesn't change the fact that I'm delighted to be here and happy that you invited me to join you this morning. I was asked, given kind of a list of thoughts and ideas of things that you might be interested in. And in general, it kind of started off with, kind of just tell us a little bit about what happened, after you joined Public Works and where you are. And it turns out that yesterday we actually had our State of Houston Public Works internal department-wide meeting. And so the good news is I have some really good notes and thoughts on that. And I also learned this morning that I need to make sure that the bio that gets sent out is the one that's been updated for another year, because now I've been at the city 15 years and I've been married 11 years and a few other things like that. But as we go through this morning, I will look forward to any questions that you might have, but I'll also just kind of share with you where we are as a department. Just like everybody else, 2020 has been really kind of one of those years for the record books in all the wrong ways. At Houston Public Works, we're actually 2 years into an effort to transform Houston Public Works, is what we've actually named the initiative. It is resilience training for our employees. It gives us an opportunity to develop employees not just for job skills and for the tasks that we have them doing every day, but really for skills of how we interact with each other, how we communicate with each other, how we display integrity, how we choose our attitudes each day. And when you look at that, you can really see that what it has done is allowed us to really live into our purpose. Part of this initiative is that we developed jointly as a department a purpose rather than a mission and vision. Our previous one had been very much written by a bunch of technical and engineer types. It included a single word that everybody could look at and say, that's me. And we really kind of pulled us into one team with one purpose. And that purpose is together we create a strong foundation for Houston to thrive. And everybody can tie themselves into that strong foundation. We make sure that the region has safe drinking water. We make sure that our wastewater is treated and returned cleanly to the environment. We make sure that our utility can continue to provide these services every day because its finances, including our billing, are taken care of in a fiscally prudent and transparent manner. We make sure that our storm drainage systems function, that they're clean and operational, and that when they need to be repaired, they're repaired. We make sure that our streets are operational. We make sure that they're repaired. And yes, we still achieve 99% of the mayor's next day pothole initiative. We make sure that our traffic signals are functioning, even after a storm. We design and we build infrastructure all over the city. We make sure that people's homes, businesses, stores, schools, and religious institutions are built to keep them safe while they use them. through our permitting center and through our permitting functions. And when called upon, we take up different duties so that we can respond to hurricanes and flooding, that we can respond when there is a large fire or even a small fire. We now assist the fire department almost weekly, ensuring that a fire is completely extinguished. We actually dispatch, we have crews that train with the fire department that actually take backhoes out to the site and help turn debris over to make sure that all of those hot spots, that the fire department can fully extinguish them before so they can leave the fire sooner. We help Houstonians stay safe during peaceful demonstrations, even going the extra mile by securing those streets and those routes with our dump trucks and our barriers and our employees. In short, we're essential employees and we show up every single day. It doesn't matter what is going on and what's happening out there. We are essential employees. We show up day in and day out, and we really live into that purpose. Together, we're a strong foundation for Houston to thrive. But when I think back on that, and we talked about this yesterday, and 3 years ago, I mean, it was just a little more than 3 years ago. We as a department were in the shadow of controversy. We had an unexpected change in leadership. And while I was part of the tail end of that change in leadership, you look at our executive team today, and of the people with the deputy director title, chief of staff, chief operating officer, 3 years ago, there was only one person on our current executive team that had the title that they have today. And several of them were not actually at the city at the time. And the one person that still had the same title, Sherry Winslow, over our customer account services, had that title for less than 6 months. So over the last 3 years, we have had a complete turnover in our entire executive team. Some of us came from within Public Works. Some of us had been at the city for a while, but all of us took on different roles 3 years ago. And then that was really July of 2017. At the end of July, I got a phone call. I was actually in Baltimore when I got a phone call that I was going to be given the interim director title, and that was like July 29th, July 30th, somewhere in that time frame. And August 25th, is a date that Houstonians will remember. Most of us will remember forever. August 25th was when Hurricane Harvey came ashore down at Rockport, and then turned and went inland, came back and turned and came up the coast. And we were in the throes of Hurricane Harvey. And I, as I confessed to my team yesterday, and I will confess to y'all, I use we very loosely. I was not here. I was in New Zealand. We had more than 50 inches of rain in less than 4 days. It turned our entire city upside down. We had some internal challenges. We actually did not get approval for our purchase cards to turn on in time for us to be able to buy food for our crews. They were out there driving into deep water. They were helping transport people to safety. There's a Herculean effort to keep our water system operational. We had at our Northeast plant, we actually had the backwash lagoon. We have to backwash the filters in our water treatment plant. The backwash lagoon actually got inundated by floodwaters, and we couldn't backwash the filters. And when that happens, your plant can no longer efficiently pull water through and treat it. And so we need all three plants to keep the pressure up in our system. And so we were very, very close to having to shut that plant down completely, but we actually had a department-wide, got a contractor to bring a tiger dam out, managed to get get people to the plant, get it set up using people not just from Houston Water, but people from transportation and drainage operations, and get out there and get it set up, get it pumped out, get new water put in it, get it sanitized, and got the backwash lagoon set back up. And we were probably 2 hours away from not only having to shut that plant down, but then having to issue a boil water notice. So when you step back and think at what this team has done during Hurricane Harvey, and then just helping with the recovery of that, we completely diverted crews to help move heavy trash, to help collect. We because of our funding sources, we couldn't just go out and pick up debris. So we were targeted to pick up debris in roadside ditches in areas to make sure that their storm sewer system was functioning. So it really has been we were kind of born in fire or flood. This team and this group that we have moving forward today. So one of the first things that we did was we actually changed our name. And Richard introduced us as Public Works and Engineering. We had been Public Works, PWE, PWE, however you want to know it, for so many years. And one of the first things that we did was actually to simplify that. And I always tell people it was a mouthful to say the City of Houston Department of Public Works and Engineering. And isn't Houston Public Works just so much easier to say? And the truth is that it is easier to say, and it is easier for social media, and it's easier for a lot of communication and this, that, and the other. But really, the reason behind changing the name was that it had to do with the and Public Works and Engineering. And really, we are not this and that. We are one team with one purpose. And we adopted our new logo. You can kind of see it here on my shirt. We adopted our new logo shortly thereafter. And when we used an outside ad agency to help us with developing a new logo. They gave us 8 options that we narrowed down to 3. And ultimately, the team selected this one as the logo that we wanted moving forward. And interestingly enough, the ad agency had actually the working name they had on this logo was Together. And so it's been very interesting that so much of the groundwork that we put in place in the organization is really coming together. Our purpose together. And we actually for a long time had the purpose, we create a strong foundation for Houston to thrive without the together on the front. And it wasn't until we put that together in there that it became really a strong, solid purpose that helped us address and recognize that it took all of us. And one of those important things, and I talk to a lot of engineering groups, and I am an engineer. I'm a licensed professional engineer, and I am very proud of my degree. But Public Works relies on all 4,000 of our employees to do what we do on a daily basis. And it takes every expertise that we have, and many of those expertises are people that don't have formal college training, but have operators licenses and have 25 years of experience working very fine skills on heavy equipment and things of that. And so our organization is one that is a very blended organization of multiple levels of skills and expertise. And part of what we did when we did that was we actually came through with our organizational values. So we have our purpose. Together we create a strong foundation for Houston to thrive. But we actually came to also develop how are we going to do that. With our organizational values, we call it our 5 to thrive. We start off with integrity. Really simple. We mean what we say. We do what we're going to promise to do. And we're transparent. We're not perfect. We'll admit that, but that's what we strive for every day. That we focus on teamwork. Everything that we do requires people working together. We ask our employees to take ownership. When they are given something to accomplish, they need to own it. They need to make decisions. They need to follow it through to the end. They need to make sure that it happens. When I'm talking with new employee orientation, I tell people they need to do the job like they were doing it for their mom or their grandma. Communication. We recognize that communication is probably the single most important thing for gluing every action that we do together and making sure that the community understands what we're doing and that we are hearing from the community. And when we do that well, we set the stage for success. But we are also emphasizing that our communication is two-way. And I'll tell you right now in this virtual world, two-way is really, really hard, because events like today where it's kind of one way, but we're going to have some Q&A when we get down the road, but it's we're being challenged on our communication right now. And ultimately, our fifth 5 to Thrive value is respect. And this one's just really simple. Each and every day, we're an organization that will succeed when we have respect, first for ourselves, for each other as colleagues, for our elected officials, for our residents and businesses that we serve, and ultimately for the city of Houston as an organization itself. We have spent a couple years trying to get to each and every facility, trying to visit each and every shift that we have employees that show up. I haven't made all the night shifts yet, but we will. And we've spent a lot of time taking questions, listening, finding out what's going on in our organization, and trying to understand what's going on. And I will tell you, one of the reasons that we have spent so much time with our listening to employees and then going into Transform Houston Public Works is, other than when am I going to get a raise, the second most common question that we heard was, how am I going to get a promotion? Why is my supervisor acting, it came down to workplace bullying. And we had a culture in our organization that we just didn't have a whole lot of respect within our organization. People were really, really good and passionate about serving the public and doing their job, but we didn't have a culture that reinforced and supported respect throughout our organization. And so we've spent 2 years working very, very hard on that. And I have to say, I'm proud of where we are. I'm proud of what we're doing and where we're going, but we certainly have a long ways to go. Some of the lessons that we're embedding in our day-to-day life, and we're teaching our team members, are things like avoiding the negative spiral. I will tell you, I personally call it the vortex of despair, and usually I say that with the vortex of despair kind of voice. Making sure that when we're talking, when we're writing, or whatever it is, that we're using our words wisely, that we are not disparaging people or things around us. We have a video clip that we saw in our training, and it's a guy that gets on an escalator, and about halfway up it breaks. And so they just sit down because they can't figure out how to walk up or down the stairs to get off the broken escalator by making a decision. And so we have these visuals that we help people. And then for supervisors, we challenge them to mine the gold in the team, to set their team up for success, to give assignments and opportunities to employees that really play to their strengths, to set them up for success so that they can build their confidence in decision making, build their confidence in their job, and grow beyond that. So really, you've seen these things pay off. We talk about keeping the water plant up in Harvey. Well, in February, the 96-inch line that broke coming out of the east plant that serves 2/3 of the city, we had to issue a boil water notice. But we actually, if you really truly stop and think about it, we had a water line with a catastrophic failure that served 2/3 of the city. We had pressure back in the system within 8 hours. We had full citywide pressures within 24 hours. In less than 24 hours, we had a sampling plan with TCEQ, had already started through the necessary sampling process, and at just less than 48 hours, we had the all clear to release the boil water notice for a 96-inch catastrophic failure. I can promise you there is no other organization in the United States that could have pulled that off. They are truly, truly amazing employees out there. So I'll talk a little bit about what we're doing through COVID and our challenges through COVID. We certainly have been, um, like many of you, challenged with how do we keep our operations going? How do we keep people safe? How do we make sure that we're still providing the services that we need to provide? And so, of our 4,000 employees, a little less than 1,000, somewhere around 800 to 900 of them, had current job duties that we were able to very easily transition to telework. They had the type of stuff that it didn't really matter where you were, you could do it. But there's another 3,000 of us that very clearly have had to be at a workplace. You had to be at a water treatment plant. You had to be at a wastewater plant. You had to be on a truck with asphalt going out to repair potholes. You had to be in the field repairing water leaks. I mean, there's just, you cannot do our job from your living room for the majority of our employees. And so we had to approach things like staggering shifts, literally assigning, that these three crews, which is 15 to 20 people, would report at 6. These three crews would report at 6:15. These three crews would report at 6:30. And so we had to start doing we had and this is one of those things where government accountability actually worked against us. We have at our facilities, we have time clocks that employees have to swipe their individual ID card and then stick their thumb on the thumbprint sensor because we want to make sure that nobody swipes somebody else in. Well, putting your thumb on a thumbprint sensor is not really the smartest thing to do in a world where COVID exists. And so, there are a lot of things that you're trying to put all of these things as a high priority, the accountability and the transparency, and it works against the safety in a pandemic. And so we've had to step back and reevaluate and readdress every single one of those. We had the same challenges as everybody else in getting PPE. And when the city could get PPE, it went to our health department, and it should have, our health department and our fire department. But it took us a while to get, we had disposable masks, and our guys would get one over the course of an entire day. Now we're in a much better place. We, just like everybody else, we couldn't get hand sanitizer. I have creative guys who went out and figured out that we could order a 50-gallon barrel of isopropyl and we could buy some aloe, and we were actually advised not to do that because we couldn't guarantee that the proportions were right. And I was like, well, surely we can. We have a lab. And so it's just, all those things that you're learning is going through this. We have been as impacted as the fire department by COVID. We, at one point, just at the beginning of June, had over 200 people out of the office. That's more than 5% of my workforce was out of the office, either in quarantine or having tested positive for COVID. And so it really was at our height. It was, and I'm, fingers crossed and prayers sent that was our worst. Was that 200 people. We're now down to less than 50 people that are currently out of the office, and the majority of them are in quarantine. But we have lost 3 employees to COVID. We had 2 pass away on the same day back in early June, and we are impacted as an organization, and we forever will be by what has happened with COVID in our organization and throughout this city. And so we are changed by it. But I will also tell you that there are some things that we've that have happened through COVID that have been benefits to us as an organization and benefits to us as a city. We had gone to the ability to be 100% online permitting over a year ago. Actually, it was in March of 2019. And we had a very low adoption rate. People just didn't want to do it online. They wanted to come in person. They felt like if they could come see that person in person, that they would get better treatment or they would get it reviewed faster or whatever it was. We had a culture that just didn't want to go to online permitting. Well, when COVID hit, we immediately went to online permitting. Well, the great thing was it actually had almost no impact on our ability to respond or turn around. In fact, I was on a meeting day before yesterday where a gentleman who does, actually it was yesterday, where a gentleman who does work in Dallas and Austin and Houston and San Antonio, and he said that our permitting department, he said, you know, you're not perfect, but your permitting department was the only one that remained fully operational, issuing permits during the beginning part of COVID. And we did have some hiccups, but we certainly were able to make that transition because we already had the technology and the training and the ability in place. The only real hiccup we had was we have some businesses that are still cash based. And so when we went to you know, we're not taking cash because we did have to for a short period of time. There were some businesses that had a really hard time with that, and so we've worked through that as well. So I guess the last topic that I have on here before we really get into some question and answer is what do you want our members to know? And I guess in just a real short, simple way, what I want your members to know is that Houston Public Works takes our job very seriously of being that strong foundation for Houston. We recognize that we are not the icing on the cake, that we're not the things that make Houston Houston, whether it's the sports teams or the theater or the parks or all those things, but we're the glue. We're the foundation that allows all those other things to happen. What we do on a daily basis allows for all of those other things to happen. And when we have our best day, nobody notices us. And when we have our worst day, everybody is upset with us. And so it's really kind of a testament to our guys that for the most part, we go unnoticed. And while we do work very hard to celebrate what we do and to make sure that people do understand what we do, that it's a challenge that we the people that come to work every single day, they're passionate about serving the public. The consultant that we have that's helping us with this transform training, she does resilience training in Fortune 500 companies and, you know, around the world, just doing all sorts of high level corporate training. And she said, Carol, she said, you're the first organization I've ever worked with that the motivation in your employees is not the issue. They are passionate. They are motivated. They show up every day. It's actually given them the skills and the tools and the opportunities. And when you stop and think about so many of us, and I'm assuming that so many of you that are at this breakfast this morning, there are so many things about your day that you don't even think about because your entire childhood, you knew you were going to college or you knew that you were, you know, there's so many of us just had the privilege of knowing that we were going to be successful in life. And so many of my employees did not necessarily grow up with that knowledge that opportunity existed for them. And so part of what our job is to create an environment and a culture where they recognize that they have opportunity in life, opportunity at work, opportunity to serve. And we have so many families that are members of our public works team. Just like you see families in the police department and families in the fire department, I am stunned at how many families we have in public works. It is in their families that they are public servants and they choose to be in public works. So when I look at our team, that volunteered to drive dump trucks downtown and set up barricades so that people could not drive into the peaceful protests and cause harm, those are the types of things that I want people like the North Houston Association all over the city to know about our employees and what we do on a daily basis. I'm confident y'all have questions for me about projects and things like that, and so I will turn it over to the question and answer, and see how we can address some of your questions, and eventually get on to my real breakfast as opposed to my virtual breakfast.
Carol, thank you very much for those words. We are going to have some questions. Unfortunately, I think we're having some trouble right now with the chat function with this live event. So if you have questions, I'm going to ask you to send them via a text. You're going to be sending them to Marlisa Briggs, and the number you're going to send those to is 281-851-5909. That's 281-851-5909. And once those start coming in, she'll relay them to myself and to Carol. But Carol, first off, I just want to say I'm really impressed with what you're doing at the city from a culture standpoint and teamwork standpoint. My question is, whose idea was that? Who's the champion of that kind of change at the city of Houston Public Works?
So I will tell you that sometimes it's an individual person, sometimes it's an opportunity of events, all these different things. But when Eric Dargan and I sat down, before Harvey, with all of the controversy and the confusion that was going on in our department with unexpected leadership changes, one of the things that we sat down and committed to was that we were going to pour every ounce of our energy and effort into taking care of the employees in the department. We weren't sure how we were going to do that, but we were committed to doing that. And then when Harvey hit, and we had a recognition that we needed for our employees to have a clear goal of what we were moving forward towards. We immediately said, okay, we need to revisit our mission and our vision, and we need to come up with a strategic plan for this executive team. And I still had an interim title at that part. Eric had an acting title at that point. Chris Butler was acting over the permitting center. Yvonne was acting over our water system. Actually, Yvonne's was selected to be the deputy director over, Yvonne Forrest was selected to be the deputy director over Houston Water, and her permanent position showed up the Saturday that Harvey hit. That was the day she went from acting to permanent. So, I mean, we were kind of all born in fire. And so I will tell you that we all collectively recognized that we needed to focus on the organization. And so I may be the one who had the ability to say, let's do it, but it was a collective, full executive team, all in. We're all in, both feet, both hands. And then when we found Sandy Ash as our consultant who's helping us, and I'm going to give her a little commercial because for those of you who don't know Sandy Ash, there is a leadership book out there called Roar, and ROAR. She worked with the San Diego Zoo, one of the world's most famous zoos, and yet they had a culture problem. And so she worked with the San Diego Zoo to help them find their purpose. And theirs is actually a really even simpler purpose than ours. Their purpose is to end animal extinction. And that book tells you about their journey and their story to get to the organization that they are today, where the person who's selling the Coke in the concession stand can tell you how what they're doing directly relates to the purpose of ending animal extinction. And so when we interviewed the multiple consultants for our strategic plan, we immediately altered our course, and instead of going for a goals and we're going to achieve these things and we're going to do these things, we immediately altered our course and said we're going to create a culture in our organization that empowers employees to succeed. And so we have been partnered with Sandy for a little over 2 years now, and it has been life-changing for the majority of us. It is truly an amazing time right now at Public Works. We have people stepping up. We have people who never thought they'd want to lead, who are giving presentations to city council committees, who are going into the community, who are sitting down with employees and saying, hey, yeah, you may not see this, but when you raise your voice in a meeting, you're not displaying respect. And it really is an exciting time right now to be an employee at Public Works. I can just make up questions.
Yeah, I'm back now. That's an outstanding response. Thanks. We just dodged a bullet with Hurricane Laura. Looked like she might be coming towards us. We were very fortunate. Tell us a little bit about your preparation for that event. And I know you had to have been applying lessons learned from Harvey and other events. Anything new you learned this time with preparing for Laura?
So one of the best things we have done for emergency response in the last 3 years is we actually hired a full-time emergency manager in Public Works. That's his job. That's his job, is to focus on having us prepared for standing up during emergencies. His name is Brian Mason, and we stole him from the airport system. But Brian focuses on that full time. So he has us lined out. He's improved our partnerships with the police department and the fire department, but we actually have a countdown depending upon what the emergency is. So for Hurricane Laura, not sure where it was going to go, and even up until that Tuesday morning, there was a really good chance it may be coming to Houston. And so, 96 hours, actually a week out, we're having initial weather calls. But by the time we're 96 hours out, we're actually making calls on activating food profiles, having people go out and count the, first off, we had to change our ride-out teams because normally we had ride-out teams that we had pretty much everybody that we thought was going to be needed during and immediately after the storm ride it out. And this time we said we can't do that because of COVID. And so we had the minimal ride-out teams to keep our plants operational, to be able to send out 18 dump trucks if necessary to support police and fire if we had to do high water rescue. But we had all that. So what we did was actually on Monday afternoon, we sent everybody who was going to be riding out home. Send them home. Your job duty for the rest of today and all of tomorrow is to get your family prepared and report back to work, report back to the building on Tuesday afternoon. And that was their job. That was what they got paid to do that. They got paid to go home and get their family ready. And then they came back to work ready to focus on the job at hand. Because it was going to be a wind event, we did not put the barricades out around town that we normally put out for the low water crossings. We didn't want them to be projectiles. We actually we have a tier system, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. So our tier 2s are the ones that stay up until right before the storm and then get released. And so just the simple act of making sure that the communication was there. Brian led the weather calls twice a day as we went through this, making sure that everybody was on the same page, making sure if anybody had any questions, if anybody was having any problems with their card not working or anything like that. And that afternoon that we had the press conference where it was pretty sure the Laura wasn't coming to us, we still had the crews ride the night out just in case. Maybe we got some heavy rain on the backside of one of those bands. They were still saying tropical force winds. We could have some trees come down. And so it was, everybody called it the best dry run that we could have gotten. And even in that, we had lessons learned and things that we're like, oh, we need to change. There are a couple more things we can do to improve. But the big focus on it was making sure that our employees were indeed ready to go, that they had the resources, they had everything that they needed available. They had food, they had water, actually a simple thing. We knew that we were going to have the fuel trucks come fill up every single City of Houston owned fuel depot on Tuesday about 1 o'clock. So we made sure that every single vehicle in our fleet and every single piece of equipment in our fleet, that the fuel had been topped off on them, so that when we had our tanks topped off, that it went even further. And so just simple things. Having somebody that can focus on that kind of stuff, because I didn't have time to focus on that. So it was a dry run. We were spared. We were very, very fortunate. I will also tell you that immediately afterwards, we were on the mutual aid and the emergency aid networks. We have a generator over in Bridge City right now, still working on one of their lift stations over there. And so we have sent crews and we've sent people and we've sent equipment in mutual aid to our sister cities. But we also have to be careful because the next one could come to us and we can't have all our spare equipment somewhere else. So it's been a balance.
Carol, this next question is from Rich Squire with AECOM. We've heard recently about the city's new street rehabilitation program and wondered if you could share a few words on that new program.
I absolutely love to, and quite frankly, that should have been my talking points. Uh, when in a little bit of history in that, so when the engineering community and the consulting community championed Renew Houston and got that on the voter ballot, and it became Rebuild Houston. We developed an internal program at the city that was really focused on reconstruction. And that's what it was. It's what it was set up as. It was what it was kind of built as. And what we didn't do in that initial program that we set up was focus on the fact that there are things that we can rehabilitate and extend their useful life before they get to needing reconstruction. And so, what the mayor challenged us to do back in January at his second inaugural address was bring me a plan for a systematic citywide rehabilitation, so that we're not just letting things fall off the cliff where they have to be reconstructed, so that we can really look at those things. Now, we have always done overlays, we've always done some panel replacements, but we really kind of did them as a last ditch repair more so than a strategic rehabilitation. And so what this is recognizing that for our infrastructure, we call it the 3 Rs, that the first line of defense is repair. If repair is not the right solution, then let's rehabilitate it. And finally, that should be a last ditch effort to reconstruct it. And so what the real thought process behind this is that if we have streets, and not just the pavement of the street itself, but sidewalks, everything in the right of way, that we can extend their useful life, then let's get out there and rehabilitate those and let's make that happen. But he expanded the program because our rehabilitation up until this year had always literally just been for cars, from the curb to the curb. And so he said, nope, we are going to do sidewalks. We're going to do those things that address all mobility citywide. So it's whether it's on your feet, whether you're on 2 wheels, whether you're on 4 wheels, whether you're in a wheelchair, whether you're trying to get to a school or you're trying to get to a bus. Those are the types of things that we're going to focus on in this. And it does. I keep getting asked, so you're not going to reconstruct, and I'm like, no, we're going to reconstruct. But where the emphasis on reconstruct is going to be is if it's driven by drainage, or it's driven by flooding, or it's driven by a pavement condition that truly is to the point that you have to reconstruct it. And where we're going to use rehabilitation is everywhere. We just recently did a long rehabilitation on Richmond, and it's fantastic. I don't know if any of y'all have driven Richmond inside the loop recently, but you can actually carry your cup of coffee with you and not wear it. And that's what rehabilitation can do for us. It doesn't fix all the underground, but it can certainly make that driving surface and those sidewalks in much, much better shape. So our goal is, if you look at the money that we had put into what I will call rehabilitation, but really all we did was put an additional layer of asphalt on top of it in most places. And right now we're actually taking it down to the base, fixing the base repairs and coming back with the right level. What we were doing, we would have touched every road citywide once every 110 years. And Now, our thoroughfares are on a 40-year cycle. We'd like to get that down to 15 to 20 years, but we're on a 40-year cycle. And our local streets are on a 75-year cycle, which for most local streets, particularly concrete local streets, that's okay. I live on a concrete local street that was built in 1958, and we haven't touched it, and it is fine. In fact, I don't want my crews to come touch it because it's fine. But we're going to have to improve that cycle as well. But it's definitely, we've cut our thoroughfares almost in a third of what we were originally going to touch them in.
Thank you. We have about 8 minutes left, and I've got two more questions that I've been provided. So 2 more, and then we'll try to get this shut down by 9 o'clock so we can all move on to our business day. You addressed COVID, Carol. The question is, some of the actions you had to take related to COVID, maybe around the city, those cost money, those come out of your budget somewhere. How's that impacted public works spending on projects or any other programs? Has that impacted the budget significantly?
So it really hasn't, because the CARES Act, everything that we put in for was approved for reimbursement through the CARES Act. And so while we had to spend the money and wait for the reimbursement has actually been pretty quick as well. Other than, to be honest with you, where COVID impacted us on projects was not in the money we spent. It was that the financial market went wonky for a while, and the municipal bond market was even impacted. We could not issue bonds, whether it was through the water and wastewater system or whether it was the general fund, and even commercial paper was impacted for somewhere between 4 and 8 weeks. And so that was actually where we got impacted, was the financial market, not so much our budget, because those reimbursements have actually, is not being political at all, just flat out, that actually part of it actually worked. The money got here, the reimbursements got here, and they have taken care of those things. They worked better than the supply chain did in responding to COVID.
Okay, next question. This comes from Michael Bloom with RG Miller, talking about Harris County pursuing the Envision certification or verification for various projects. They have trained 54 people that have become certified in that program. How do you anticipate the city utilizing that program?
So I will say that I do anticipate that we're going to be heading down that same road. One of the things that we're working with with our resilience office is how do we make sure that what we're doing in public works aligns with the resilience citywide, whether it's housing, whether it's our community centers, all those things, and how they all support each other. And I do know that we actually have several projects right now that are using the Envision tool to guide us through design. So we're slowly learning. I will tell you, the city of Houston and Harris County would be a study for many master's degrees for different people, and just looking at the way that we implement policy and procedures differently. City of Houston tends to be a little more task force input driven, where the Harris County tends to adopt something and then figure out the implementation on the backside. It's just a different approach to those things. I suspect that before the end of this mayor's term, that our projects will all be, right now we have a requirement that all buildings be LEED eligible. They need to be the equivalent of LEED silver. I suspect that we're going to have a similar requirement for our infrastructure, that not necessarily everything is truly Envision rated through the process, but that it will achieve the same goals that the Envision system sets out.
Great. I am going to slip in one last question related to Harris County. I was just wondering how your public works relationship with Harris County engineering staff, how that's evolved over the last 5 years, and then notably Harris County Commissioners Court is looking to change the way that the Toll Road Authority runs and operates, and is looking for transferring money from the toll road over to general county operations. And I realize that's a bit of a stretch in relation to public works, but still, can you give us a little feedback on those topics?
Well, so the first one, I will say I've always had a good relationship with Russ, with John Blunt, with the staff level over at Harris County. I mean, I did work for Harris County for 7 years, so there's the staff level. We've always had a really good relationship. We haven't always approached things the same way, and a lot of that has to do with the differences in the type of development that we have. In Houston, we're dealing with infill and redevelopment and small development. And in the county, you see a lot of greenfield and large subdivision type development. And we have different constraints on what it is that we're doing and we're accomplishing. But we're trying to accomplish the same levels of protection and the same approaches to keeping our residents safe and making sure that we don't impact our neighbors and things of that nature. I meet with the county at least, we have a standing once a month meeting, and we typically meet more often than that. And I hope y'all aren't hearing the coffee grinding in the background, but you may be. What I will say is that we definitely work very well together. We are fully understanding of where the Commissioners Court is going and putting out their kind of line in the sand of, if you're going to be a partner for funding in the county, you're going to achieve these levels of protection. Now, we are having to work through the wording of exactly what that means, because achieving a level of protection versus thou shalt do it exactly this way are certainly something that we're working through. And John Blunt, I actually spoke to Commissioners Court this Tuesday, and John Blunt even said, they've got different types of development in the city of Houston. They have to be worried about where finished floors are compared to wastewater manholes, where that's not something that the county, they're not involved in water wastewater, so they don't have those types of rules. And so it really is, I think that we're actually in a really good place in the relationship between the city and the county and our mutual constituents that we serve. The other thing that I will say about the toll road thing is, as much as I know about it. So I'm not going to be able to really answer a question on that at all. I had one question, and John Blunt and Russ Poppy both, said, hey, we know what the Commissioners Court has talked about, because that's not in their basket of responsibilities. So it's one of those things that I suspect that we're going to learn a whole lot more about. The one thing that I did hear, and I do think that this does make sense, is that right now that the funding from the toll road that comes over to the county is restricted to mobility. If it is stood up as a separate local government entity, that the funding that came across to the county would not be restricted. And so that's a big part of the consideration.
Okay, Carol, thank you very much for those words. That is the last question that we have today. And so, Carol, I want to really thank you. This has been great. It's been great input and feedback from you. And the North Houston Association really appreciates you participating and giving us this good information today. And so, again, thank you very much. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to our president, Marlisa Briggs, to make just a few closing announcements.
All right, I'm back. I wanted to make sure that you didn't hear my coffee grinding in the background, so I was on mute. But no, I really appreciate all of you and your participation this early, and wanted to give you a couple of dates to look for and to keep in mind. So next week, coming up in less than a week, on September 23rd, is our rescheduled flood control panel. As a lot of you know, that was rescheduled because we had a little hurricane threatening us, and thankfully we escaped that, but that event will be on September 23rd. So tickets are still available. Hop on our website and register for that one. Also on that same day, we have our Development Trends Committee meeting, and we are really excited to have Sally Bradford speak to us. She is with the North Houston Redevelopment Authority. She actually, or their organization, is responsible for many great projects in our service area, namely the Rockstar BMX bike park and some other great things that they've got going on in North Houston. So make sure to tune into that. That is open to everyone and there is no charge, but if you want to hop on our website and register, that would be great. So you'll have that link. Let's see what else. Oh, golf. We have a golf tournament on October the 5th and we are sold out of teams, but there's still sponsorships available. So come on out and have a good time and register for that also on our website. And the last thing I will tell you is October the 15th is our annual awards luncheon in our State of the Counties. That is virtual, and we are expecting Judge Hidalgo and Judge Keogh to speak at that event. And I think that's all I've got. So as you can see, the common theme is our website. Always go there for the latest information or just send me an email. And now that you all have my cell phone, I guess you can text me too. So that's it. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day and a great weekend.